Hello and welcome. My name's Hayden Evans and I'm joined once again by Tobias Hunt and Adam Cleary. As you know, we're normally on the Welsh Prem pod, but today we're taking a little break from that, just one-off Six Nations special. We'll be joined by a number of special guests throughout the show: Phil Steele, Jackman, Tim Visser, Freddie Burns, Ian McKinley and Illtud Dafydd. So without further ado, let's get on and crack on with it then. So Adam, what do you make of Wales's recent performances in last year's Six Nations and the Autumn Nations Cup? And how do you think they'll get on this year?
So since Pivac's taken over, Wales have only won 3 games, twice against Italy and once against Georgia. Only really played well in one of those wins as well, which was the Six Nations game last year against Italy. I think we will see performances improve slightly in this campaign, playing in the stadium again. Obviously no fans, but I think, just playing in the stadium alone will help to up the performances. I think we'll be lucky to win 2 games, if I'm honest. I think we'll beat Italy away, and then Scotland away, that's a tough game. So I think those are the 2 best chances of getting a win. But no, I would be surprised if we win 2 games. I can see us finishing 5th.
Well, we've got to improve really, and we can't get much worse than what we've been in the autumn. But first 2 games, I think, are the biggest 2. Ireland are home. Ireland, I know they are a strong side, but we get stuck into them early. I think we can give them a game, and then Scotland away. If we perform both of them games, I think we'll have an half decent Six Nations. But really, I can't see us winning more than 1 game.
Yeah, I mean, we know there's still a lot of talent in the Wales squad. If you look at the likes of Jonathan Davis, Alan Wynne-Jones, Toby Faletau and Justin Tipuric, if they're all firing on their day, we can certainly beat anyone. But it's whether Pivac can sort of get what he wants out of them, and so far that hasn't happened. Obviously, we'd like to think Wayne Pivac will be able to do that and get the most out of the boys, but the jury's still out on him. And I think if we underperform this Six Nations, and by underperform, if we only manage to beat Italy, I think Wayne Pivac could seriously be out of a job. Obviously, Gethin Jenkins has taken over the defence. What are your thoughts on that, boys?
Yeah, obviously he's inexperienced at this level, but no, it'd be good to see how he gets on. I mean, he's coming in. There's not too much pressure on him because the defence was struggling before he came in. It's not as if he's coming in to replace Sean Edwards. So, yeah, he'll be looking to improve on Byron Hayward's defence. And, yeah, it's exciting times, I think, just to see how he gets on.
Yeah, I'm with that there. I mean, he's coming in. There's not much pressure on him because we're bound to improve at some point defensively, but just give him time in there, and hopefully we will improve.
And obviously the Wales squad's recently been announced. Adam, who's your player to watch in the squad?
Yeah, my player to watch is Dan Lydiate. Obviously, everyone knows about him. He hasn't played for Wales since 2018, but his form for the Ospreys this season, and even last season when they were really struggling, was impressive. So I think he definitely deserves a chance again. I think I expect to see him starting at 6 on Sunday against Ireland.
Yeah, I've gone with Faletau as my player. We all know what he can do on his day, but I thought in the autumn he was outstanding, especially the Italy game. But once he's fit, I think he's one, if not the best number 8 in the world. Offloading games is outstanding, and his footwork to beat the first man. I think him and Tipuric in our Italy game together, I think created a couple of tries, and I thought if he's on form now, Six Nations, we can really have some go forward ball off him.
Yeah, I've gone for Adam Beard in the second row. I thought when he first came through with Wales, I didn't think he was all that, to be honest. And fair play to him. He lost his place in Wales and he went back to the Ospreys, and this season he's been performing really well. If you look at that second row, obviously, Alan Wynne-Jones, he's still amazing, still does what he does really well, but he is coming to the end of his career, unfortunately. Jake Ball will be back home to Australia when his contract's up at the end of the season. And if you look elsewhere in the second row, Corey Hill's not really performed this season. So I think Adam Beard could seriously be a contender to start in the second row. And if he does start, wins a lot of lineouts, makes his tackles, and is decent around the park.
Yeah, I want to touch upon the Lydiate thing, Ad. What do you make of Shane Lewis, who's not been in the squad after a good autumn?
Yeah, it is a bit of a strange one, really. But I think Lydiate has really impressed for the Ospreys. He's been playing week in, week out. I think Shane Lewis-Hughes now, he put some big performances in for the Blues before the end of the season. And if the Wales summer tour does go ahead to Argentina, I think he'll definitely be on the plane.
Is there any standout exclusions from the squad for you? Any others?
Well, I think Rhys Webb, obviously British and Irish Lion. It was Wales' first choice scrum half a few years ago before he went out to Toulon. He hasn't been great for the Ospreys this season, but against Connacht in their most recent game, I think he scored 2 tries and got man of the match. So he's definitely upped his game. And again, if there's an injury to someone in the to a scrum half in the squad, he'd be the first one to be called up.
Yeah, I know Webb is the standout name, but I thought Shane Lewis Hughes wasn't lucky because I thought he's probably one of the best players in the squad in the autumn. But like, you can't shy away from what Lidgett's done this season. Do you know what I mean? He's been class and he does deserve a chance. So,
and an area which we struggled, Tobias, in the Autumn Nations Cup was the front row. Who do you expect to be the starting front row for the first game against Ireland?
Yeah, I think Loosehead picks himself really. Wyn Jones, the best scrummager in the squad. Do you know what I mean? Ken Holmes is fully fit. He's got to come in, a hooker, especially how he struggled with lineouts as well in the autumn. And then tight dead, obviously, again, I'd go Tom Francis if he's fit. Probably the best tight scrummager. Samson Needling's in the squad, but Francis is probably the best scrummager. So we have to go strong up front because we did really struggle in the autumn.
And Adam, Wales's most competitive position would probably be a scrum half position at the moment. Who would you say starts at 9 against Ireland?
For me, I'd go Thomas Williams and then Gareth Davies off the bench. Obviously, everyone knows how good Gareth Davies is at being in the right place at the right time to score tries. I think against a tiring Irish defence, maybe 20 minutes left, half an hour, bring him on. And I think he could make a difference. So yeah, I'd go Thomas Williams to start and then bring Gareth Davies on.
And Hayden, number 10 shirt, I know that's your position, so tell us your thoughts.
Well, I think it's a battle between my head and my heart, really, because my heart, I really like Jared Evans as a player. I think his all-round game's phenomenal. Whether he can bring that to the Wales shirt is yet to be seen, but if I was going to give him a shot, I think I would, but my head probably says that Pivac will stick with Biggar. Biggar's a phenomenal player, don't get me wrong, and what he does is amazing, particularly when he's under pressure. Maybe controls the game a lot better than the other two in the squad. And then obviously Sheedy as well is a massive name and his attacking game's brilliant. You see him running the show week in, week out for Bristol. So realistically, it could be any of them. Personally, I'd go for Jared Evans, but it's a flip of a coin, really.
I think Biggar has to start this weekend, though, because how strong Ireland are in the kicking game. And Biggar is one of the best players in the squad, probably, if not the best in the air. Do you know what I mean? Jared Evans or Sheedy off the bench last 20 minutes. If the game's open, both of them can tear defences apart on their day, but I think Biggar will have to start.
Yeah, similar to what I've just said about bringing Gareth Davies off the bench. I think bringing one of Jared Evans or Sheedy off the bench, could really make a difference in the last 20 minutes if it's a tight game and it's starting to open up.
Adam, then, can I have a score prediction for Sunday?
I think I'll go Wales 18, Ireland 29. I think it won't be an embarrassing loss, but I can't see us getting close to them, especially in the autumn. They did beat us quite comfortably.
I think it'll be a bit closer. I'll go Ireland by 5.
I think it'll be probably maybe 21-12 or something like that. I think similar to Adam, really. It'll be close, but Ireland will just be too much in the end. Mainly confidence, really. I think just that confidence that Ireland have. If it's close going into the end of the game, then Ireland will know that they can have that win and they can grind out a win, whereas it might be in a lot of the Wales players' heads that they haven't got many wins lately and they might struggle. Moving on to our first guest then, representing Wales out of our 5 guests. Everyone will know him. He's been on BBC and S4C, covers all rugby in Wales. It's sports journalist and broadcaster Phil Steele. So first of all, obviously you've been a rugby fan all your life, involved in sports broadcasting for a long time. What are some of your favourite Six Nations memories?
I think probably two really, going back to when I was a youngster in my teenage years, 1978 season. I was in Dublin. I was a 16-year-old. I was in Dublin when Wales beat Ireland 20 points to 16 to win the Triple Crown for the 3rd successive year. The triple crown. It hadn't been done ever before. My dad was a railwayman, so I had free travel on the trains and the boat across to Ireland. I went on the Holyhead train, changed at crew on the Friday night, straight from school, travelled overnight, got to Dublin about 8 in the morning, had a ticket for the game from Glamorgan Wanderers Youth, watched the game. I went on the pitch afterwards, picked up a bit of grass where JJ Williams, the late great JJ Williams, had scored the decisive try, and came home then straight away after the game, back in school on the Monday. So that was one. And the other one was the last game of that season was the France game. Wales beat France 16-7. Jean-Pierre Bastia, who sadly died today, one of the great French back row forwards, was skippering the side. And skippering France. Wales won 16-7. Phil Bennett scored 2 tries, one of which was right in front of me in the front of the South Stand. I think I paid £2.50 for a ticket, which was fantastic. Phil Bennett scored 2. Gareth Edwards dropped a goal. It was Wales's 3rd Grand Slam in 6 years. And that was the last time Phil Bennett and Gareth Edwards played for Wales. So that was a real I was there moment. So, but most years it throws up, interesting and wonderful matches. 99, Wales beating England at Wembley. Wales beating Ireland in 2005 for the first Grand Slam for 27 years. England, the 30 points to 3 game at Cardiff, and other matches between other teams. Some of the French displays over the years, Italy's wins over Scotland, and the only Italy win over France was fantastic. So it always throws up memories because it's such an iconic tournament, isn't it?
And this year's tournament's obviously different with it being behind closed doors. How do you think this will affect all the teams?
Yeah, I think you've got to put when the annals have come to be written about this, I think you've got to put a big asterisk against this year, precisely because there are no fans there. I think it's going to affect Wales disproportionately more than the other teams, because I think there's no team of all the 6. I think Wales gets the biggest boost from playing in front of a full Principality stadium. And also away, everyone likes to play in front of their home fans. But if Wales go away to Scotland, there's always, big support, 15,000 perhaps. To Italy, big support. France away, there's always big support. So I think the fact that there's not going to be crowds is going to affect Wales more than the other teams. You might get the odd strange result, because there's no crowds. The odd result against the grain, if you like, but I think you've got to put a big asterisk against it. And apart from that, it's not just what will happen on the field; it's the whole. I mean, normally this week, my brother would be phoning me. What do you think? Which side do you think he's going to pick? I'd be having emails, take part in this sweep, for who's going to win and all this sort of thing, and I'd be chatting the pubs about the team and the performances. There's none of that going on, so it's going to be a very, very strange tournament. But I just suppose we're lucky that we've got something to watch.
Yeah, and the 36-man squad was announced 2 weeks ago now. What were your thoughts on the squad?
I thought it was as expected. I'm glad that he's got a few of the young players back in. I mean, Louis Rees-Zammit, great to see him in. And he'll probably play now on Saturday because of what's happened to Josh Adams. He's been banned for 2 matches for stupidly breaking the COVID protocols that the squad have put in. So I think we've got to go for him. I think I'd quite like to see him starting with Jaron Evans or Sheedy. I don't think he will against Ireland, because that Ireland game is a big one, first one up. You win that one, a little bit of momentum, and you never know, even though Wales haven't got much form going in. But I think it's a pretty good squad, and I think it's the squad that most people would have picked. I'm glad to see Dan Lydiat's back in. I've seen him probably 10 times now since rugby started back up, and he's been fantastic on every occasion. The fact that he's 32 doesn't matter to me. Good to see Josh Navidi back in as well. Obviously, we're missing Liam Williams for the opening game, but I think it's the squad that most people would have picked.
Did you think there was anyone that was unlucky to not make the final squad?
You suggest a couple of names, and I'll tell you whether I think they were. It's the squad I would have picked, really. So I wouldn't say that. Who are you sort of thinking of?
Rhys Webb, for example.
Rhys Webb. I can see why he's going there. He made his justification that he thought Rhys was a bit slow getting the ball away from the scrum, maybe. So he made his justification there. You wouldn't, if he'd picked Reece and left out, say, Thomas Williams or any of the other scrum halves that he's picked, you could say that they were unlucky then, you know. So I think with the 35-man squad as well, it was 35, wasn't it? With a 35-man squad, I think you can always make a case for people being unlucky and so on. But I think the Reece got the headlines because he is such a, you know, has been such a great player for Wales, and he's one of the most experienced, what have you. But when it comes to squad picking, I think you've got to, unless it's a really, really, you know, incredible omission, I think you've got to get behind the squad and say, well, Wayne Pivac's the coach, he's in charge, let's get behind him, and we'll see what happens when all is said and done, type of thing.
Yeah, so obviously Wales struggled last year. How do you see them getting on this year?
Well, so much depends upon that opening game against Ireland. I mean, this is where the crowd will come in again, because the players will tell you England is the one that all the fans love to win, but probably Ireland, you ask the players, Ireland is the game that they feel that they want to win most of all, because there's always a little bit of needle because of the fact they've been on, a lot of those Welsh players have been on the end of some defeats quite often and quite big by those Irish players when they play for their provinces, Leinster, Munster, etc. in particular. So that's a big game, and the fact that there's no crowd there. If you imagine Saturday, if there's a little bit of needle between one or two of the players, and the crowd gets wind of it and starts to get behind Wales and chants Wales, Wales, and everything, that could be a big thing. But I still think it is a home advantage will count a little bit for Wales, even without the crowd. So if they get off to a win on Saturday, then you never know, because the Six Nations, a 5-match tournament, particularly in these days when it is condensed over a 6-week period, you get a good win, a win over Ireland. All of a sudden, you go into Scotland, and you get a sneaker win up there, and all of a sudden things can change in a week. So I think it all depends upon how that first game against Ireland goes. If I had to put a betting man, I would say if Wales this is not my head, not my heart. I think if Wales come out of it with a win over Scotland and a win over Italy, I think that's where I put my money.
And then finally, to finish off, we'll do some quick fire predictions. So first of all, who do you see winning the tournament?
I think England will win the tournament, but I would say that a Grand Slam not guaranteed. And the reason I say that because they've got to go to Ireland away. They've got to go to Dublin, which is always pretty tough for them, although they won well there 2 years ago. You never know what France can do, even if they have to come to Twickenham. So I'd say England, because of their strength in depth, you know, they're so used to winning. They've lost one in 2 years, I think it is. So I'd say England, but not necessarily with a Grand Slam. And
then a bit easier, wooden spoon.
I think, yeah, you've got to go for Italy. Although Franco Smith has picked a very experimental squad, a lot of young talent there. I'm looking forward to seeing Nicolo Canoni in the second row. Only 4 players in his squad have got more than 30 caps, so he's really sort of got a big clear out there, and he's going with youth. So, but I still think you'd have to, put them for the wooden spoon, really.
Player of the tournament?
Player of the tournament, I would think somebody like, you can never rule out Mario Itoje, can you? Finn Russell, if things fall right for him, he could work his magic, and that would be great to see. And also, but I'm going to go with the French scrum half, Antoine Dupin, who's for me the best scrum half in the world at the moment, and played so well. And I can't see past him, because if he plays like he's played for the last year, he'll be head and shoulders above a lot of players. Yeah,
and then finally, a breakthrough player.
A breakthrough player. Well, I'm going to go for what would we call him, a breakthrough player? But I'm going to go for Louis Rees-Zammit from Wales. If he gets ball on good fast tracks, the roof is going to be shut on Saturday. That should keep the silence in.
Moving on to Ireland then, and the team that Wales are playing on Sunday. They finished 3rd in last year's Six Nations. And boys, how do you think they'll get on this time?
I think they'll finish 3rd again, to be honest. I think it's between England and France for the title. So I can see Ireland finishing 3rd. It's between them and Scotland for 3rd place, in my opinion. But I think they'll probably just edge it.
Yeah, same with me. I think, Ireland probably beat us. I think they beat Italy, and I think they beat Scotland. England and France games then. I think it depends what Ireland team turn up. On their day, we know they can do a job against anyone, but we'll have to see how they get on.
So who are your players to watch then, Adam?
I've gone for Caelan Doris from Leinster, the number 8. He's only got 7 caps, but I think, well, fortunately from a Welsh perspective, he's out on Sunday, picked up a knock, so we won't be playing. But I think he's a brilliant player. I've seen him play for Leinster in the Pro 14 and the Champions Cup, and he's one of the reasons why Leinster are the team they are.
Yeah, and I've gone with a name I know a lot of Welsh fans will know. It's Tad Burn, Munster second row. I think he's a nuisance to the breakdown. Brilliant line-out option. I think he was class last week in Munster's loss against Leinster. A couple of turnovers and a try. And I think all-round game for second row. His work great. His defensive work, his tackling work. He's an outstanding player.
Yeah, I've gone for Hugo Keenan, the Leinster back 3 player. He's just real X factor really, and his attacking skills are second to none. But he does defend well as well, and where he plays is obviously the question. I think he'll probably stay at fullback with Stockdale out, James Lowe on one wing and Lama on the other wing. I think that's pretty much a given for their back 3. But yeah, he lights up any game he plays in, whether that's for Leinster in the Champions Cup or Ireland in the Six Nations or whatever. And yeah, he does have a try. He can cut through anyone. Still only young, but he's definitely got a bright future ahead of him. And maybe he could be a bolter for the Lions tour. Whether that goes ahead this year or next year, that's a completely different question whatsoever. And Adam, you obviously mentioned that Caelan Doris is not going to be available to Ireland for this game against Wales. Neither is Quinn Rue, but they've been replaced in the Ireland squad by Gavin Coombs and Ryan Baird. What do you make of Gavin Coombs? I know he's someone that's impressed you a lot.
Yeah, just seeing him play for Munster in the Pro 14 this year, he's been really impressive. Gets past the gain line more often than not. Really strong ball carrier. Whether he'll be in the 23 on Sunday, I'm not sure, because obviously Ireland's got good strength and depth. But no, if he is in the 23, it'd be interesting to see how he plays, because at provincial level out in Ireland, he's been fantastic.
And Tobias, then, as Adam mentioned, the Ireland back row is a very strong position. What do you expect the starting back row to be like against Wales?
Well, I think obvious choice, CJ Stander goes straight in. I think Omani might get a shot with 7. With his experience. And 8 then, I think it is open. I think Rhys Ruddock's back in the squad. Been playing well this year for Leinster. I won't be surprised to see him in there. And Coombs could sneak in onto the bench as well, but I think I'd go Stander, Omani and Ruddock.
Yeah, I think Will Connor's definitely in with a shout as well. He's played really well for Ireland when he's been given his chance, and plays really well for Leinster all the time. Personally, I think I'd go Connor 7, Stander 8, and Omani at 6. But Ad, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you there, Haid. I think Peter Omani and CJ Stander, they're certain to start, and then it's just who else comes in. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see who that is.
And obviously Wales have got a really strong back row as well. What do you think that might be where the game's won or lost on Sunday?
I think we might. It's hard to say, but I think we might even get the upper hand in the back row. So I don't think that's where the game will be won or lost, because I can see Ireland beating us quite comfortably anyway.
I think the front 5 is where the game will be done. Set piece wise, like we said, Wales have struggled set piece in the autumn. And Ireland are known the strong front 5, strong set piece. So I think for Wales set piece not on point, we will struggle big time.
Moving on then to our second guest, and this is a man who coached the Dragons a few seasons ago in the Pro 14. He's also represented Ireland and Leinster as well at provincial level. It's former hooker Bernard Jackman.
Some massive games between Wales and Ireland over the last few years. What does a rivalry mean to you?
I think it's massive, and Wales, especially there was a bit of tension with Warren Gatland, obviously having been a previous Irish coach, and Wales always seemed to up their game to play against Ireland, and it was obviously a frustration as well, because we were used to winning at provincial level against your regions, but a lot of times Wales were able to get the upper hand at international level. So there's been a big rivalry there. Obviously, we won a Grand Slam in Cardiff Millennium Stadium with Ronan O'Gara drop goal, and obviously you guys won Six Nations and a Grand Slam beating us recently. So it's been back and forth, and there's still the thing about Wales under Warren obviously was, I would say that was a golden generation. The Tipbricks, the Faltows, the Alan Wynne Jones, the Ken Owens, the Biggers, the John Davies, the George Norts, the Halfpennies. So there's a lot of them are still there, and it's just a case of whether Wayne and can get another 2 or 3 years out of them where they bring the same level of success. And whereas Ireland, despite having an older squad, the average age, there's 11 over 30. There's fellas starting to drop away like Sir Rory Best and things like that. So it's going to be tense for sure.
So the Ireland squad was announced the other day. Then who are your players to look out for in the Irish squad?
Look, I think the starting team is going to be pretty tried and tested. So it'll be Cian Healy. Ty Furlong is a key man for us. He hasn't played since February, but he's back in the squad now. He's going to play for Leinster, I think, this weekend in the Pro 14 just to get some game time. The guy, we've blooded a lot of players over the last year, but probably only 2 of them are likely to feature in the Six Nations. And one is the number 8, Caelan Doris from Leinster, who's a phenomenal player, and he's broken into that back row. And the other is a young fullback wing, a fellow called Hugo Keenan from Leinster. But apart from that, it'll be Robbie Henshaw, Ringrose, Sexton, Murray, O'Mahony, Stander, James Ryan. There's a guy you guys know well, Tyke Byrne, had a stint in Scarlets. He's been in really good form the last couple of weeks, so he may sneak into the second row. And the way the rules are at the moment around the breakdown, he's a very good jackal threat, so he could have a big influence on games. And obviously he'd be well known to a lot of those Scarlets players who look like are going to underpin the Welsh team.
And what players do you think were unlucky to miss out on the Six Nations squad?
I thought John Cooney from Ulster was very unlucky, really. I mean, if you look at the squad at scrum half, obviously you have Murray, who's probably going to start, but then you've got a guy called James Gibson Park from Leinster, who lost his place for the last month. Luke McGrath's got back into form, and Gibson Park got picked ahead of him. And the other scrum half is the sub-scrum half to Conor Murray, a fellow called Craig Casey. So kind of like what you have with the Scarlets, you've got both Scarlets 9s in. We've both Leinster 9s in, both Munster 9s in. So I think Cooney's probably a little bit unlucky. And a guy called Jack Carty in Connacht at 10. He was man of the match over Christmas. Connacht beat Leinster, scored, I think, 22 points or 23 points. And probably he's a little bit unlucky, but Ross Byrne is a good player as well, and Billy Burns is good. But I would say they be the 2 guys I would say are probably most unlucky.
Yeah, and Ireland finished in 3rd place in last season's Six Nations. What did you make of their campaign?
It wasn't great, to be honest. I think we finished strongly with a good win against Scotland, but we were well beaten in France, well beaten by England. I think, to be honest, the expectation levels here are 3rd is about right for us at the moment. If you just look at how good France are, I know they've had a couple of injuries the last week or 2, but France look to be coming force, and arguably should have beaten England in the Autumn Cup in the final with a second string. So, and I think England just have the power game that we don't have at the moment. So, I think ourselves, Wales and Scotland are probably battling for 3rd. I don't want to be pessimistic, but that's how I would see it at the moment. And if you go on Pro 14 form, we'll have the top 2 teams in both conferences probably. So we should be the best of the rest, but that doesn't always translate to international rugby.
Moving on to Wales then, what do you make of Wales' chances for the tournament and particularly the game against Ireland?
Yeah, Wales are hard one to judge, really. Obviously, it's been a tough year for the regions. Ospreys are starting to turn the corner. Look to be the players who were injured and out of form have come back into form, which is great. And Alan Wynne Jones is obviously still to come back into that squad. So that's a positive. The Blues over the last couple of weeks have looked better for sure. The big issue is, for the national team, they just seem to be all that change in terms of so many coaches leaving at the same time. And obviously Wayne trying to implement a different style of rugby just is taking time. And even the Georgia victory wasn't really convincing. So you just have to wonder where the confidence levels are at. Having said that, players like Lydius, players like George North are in form at the moment, and if they can bring that form in, they're world-class players. And Alan Wynne-Jones comes back from injury. Ken Owens is now back fit. So they were missing some key guys, and obviously there was that problem with change defence coach, etc. So that's all done now. So I mean, Wales have an ideal opportunity first up to get a win against Ireland, and I think that could kickstart, their campaign, but also give them confidence again. I mean, there's lots of players in that squad who know what it takes to win at an international level, and are proven international quality players. So that's the challenge for Wayne. And obviously the difficulty is if they don't win, he has the proven players, so there's going to be pressure on him. But it's very hard to say how Wales are going to be. The problem is, and I think this is an issue for the Welsh players, is that I do believe the Welsh players feed off the crowd, maybe more than anybody else, and
no doubt.
And they're not used to playing in front of big crowds at regional level. But when they play for Wales, it's such an emotional charge, and that's not there at the moment, and that's and even they played those games in Llanelli in the autumn, because obviously Millennium wasn't available. So it does affect your mindset when you're getting ready to play for your country and it's not even in your national stadium. So I just hope that by going back to the Millennium and the Six Nations, just gets them back mentally and emotionally to get back into their best form.
Yeah, and I want to touch upon some of the Dragons boys in the Welsh squad, because I know we've worked with a few, the likes of Wainwright, Elliot D, Leon Brown.
Yeah.
What do you make of these boys?
No, look, I think Wainwright's excellent. I struggled to see why maybe he wasn't getting selected. I think he's got a lot of X factor. I thought the form he was in under Gats, he looked to be like a British and Irish line. And obviously Wayne wants him to play ace, and he can play across the back row, but I like Wainwright a lot. I think Elliot D, I don't understand how he wasn't originally picked in November, and especially the way the Wales lineouts had been going. I think he had built up. I think he was in something like 23 or 24 Welsh 23s in a row under Gats, and I hadn't seen him disimprove, but so that was difficult to go from second choice to fourth choice, really. And I think he's got a lot to offer. Leon is going to be a phenomenal tight head, but unfortunately tight heads have to serve their time, and he still sometimes finds it difficult at scrum time. But that's just one you got to just be patient with and let him develop. And obviously Tom Francis has come back to Wales next year, which is great for Wales to be able to still pick him. But I think someone like Leon Brown, who's such a good athlete, is just worth it's worth the time and the pain that you have to go through until eventually then you get a world-class prop in all areas.
And who can you see winning the tournament? And obviously, who can you see getting the wooden spoon as well?
Yeah. Oh, look, the wooden spoon's easier than winning it, Italy.
That's it, that's right.
But, it's Italy for the wooden spoon. England and France have to come to Ireland. And I'm not saying we'll win it, but we potentially can beat one of them at home. I think France, with Aldred out, Vakatara out now, they may be a little bit more vulnerable. I know they showed great depth in Twickenham, but Eddie messes around with his team a lot, and he picks the same guys a lot, but he messes around with his tactics. So I think England have the Farrell mentality, Biddy Vunipola, Toje, they have guys who are probably used to winning and are able to have a massive influence on games. So I would, if I had to have a bet, I'd have a bet on England, but I don't think they're markedly better than France.
Couple of questions then to finish. Couple of quick fire questions. Yeah. So for the Six Nations then, your tournament winners?
Yeah, England.
Well, Italy, surprise.
England, yeah. Get your money on, lads, Italy. Yeah.
Player of the tournament?
2 points.
Breakthrough player of the tournament.
Doris.
And if you could pick one player from outside of the Irish team, so from one of the other countries to play for Ireland, who would you pick?
I told you.
So Scotland next then for Wales. And obviously they finished 4th in last year's Six Nations. And probably the biggest talking point was their victory against Wales at Parc y Scarlets. And they don't win many down here. But boys, what did you make of that game in particular? And how do you think they'll get on this year?
I thought Scotland deserved the win, to be totally honest. They come down here, they were confident, they played well, better side on the day and deserved the win. And they are an improving side under Gregor Townsend now. You know, they've got a few X-factor players in the squad. You've got your Hogg, your Finn Russell on the backs. And up front, you know, Jamie Ritchie and Hamish Watson have been outstanding over the last 12 months from as well. So I think they're a really good side of them, and they're still improving.
Yeah, they were probably the better team on the day, but I don't think they were anything special. I just think we were really poor that day. Obviously, playing at Parc y Scarlets didn't help, having to move it away from the Millennium, you know, obviously with no fans as well. So, yeah, it was a good chance for Scotland to finally get that win. First time since 2004, they'd won away to Wales. So, yeah, they did deserve it. And I think this year be similar. I can't see them finishing higher than 4th, unless they beat Ireland, that is. But, yeah, I think it's between them and Ireland for the 3rd spot, like I mentioned, but I can see Scotland finishing 4th.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there are some real X-factor players in Scotland's squad. And as opposed to previous years, maybe where there's been 3 or 4 world-class players, they are sprinkled through with world-class players now. So, Tobias, who's your player to watch for Scotland this Six Nations?
Yeah, I've gone with young Bath centre, Cameron Redpath. I know he's been on England's radar. He's played for England at the 20s. He's been named in the Eddie Jones squad before, but didn't play because of injury. I think Scotland have found a real gem there. Getting him up, I think he'd be capped straight away. Hopefully he'll start at 12, but I thought he's been outstanding for Bath this season. No, he's still only young, but I think give him a few years on the international scene, he could be one hell of a player.
Yeah, I've gone for the Edinburgh winger, Duhan van der Merwe. He's been really impressive for Edinburgh in the Pro 14 over the past few seasons. Got called up to the Scotland squad, got 5 caps to his name so far. Will obviously be adding to that in the Six Nations. I just think he's a fantastic winger. He's got everything you want. He's quick, he's strong, and he scores tries. So, yeah, he's one to watch for sure.
Yeah, with obviously Josh Adams is having a bit of a dry patch for Wales. Do you think this time last year you probably would have said that Josh Adams is nailed on for a Lions spot, but would you say Duhan van der Merwe might have overtaken him in the pecking order?
No, not yet. I think we'll see what happens in the Six Nations now, but I'd say Josh Adams is still ahead of him in the pecking order. But if Josh Adams has a poor Six Nations and van der Merwe has a really impressive one, then obviously roles will be reversed and van der Merwe will be in front of him.
Yeah, and obviously James in charge as well. And do you mean he knows Josh Adams? All right, he's going through a dry patch, but he knows what he can do.
Yeah.
With North coming back into form as well, and James Lowe for Ireland playing really well, that's probably a really competitive position. And we don't know when the Lions tour is going to go ahead, but I'm sure Warren Gatland will have many a sleepless nights picking his
You've
wins.
got young Rhys Dammit as well, a bolter. Do you know what I mean? He's been outstanding for Gloucester the last couple of years. He'll start for Wales this weekend, I'm not sure. But do you know what I mean? I think he'll be in the 23 and I think he'll be an outsider for a Lions tour, 100%.
And obviously you've got Johnny May with England, been really impressive. So yeah, we've definitely got enough players in those positions.
Getting back on topic then, and my player to watch for Scotland this Six Nations, and I don't think you can look far beyond this man, is Johnny Gray. Obviously, he's got his big money move down to Exeter, where he's continued to play really well. He does everything really. He wins line out, he smashes people left, right, and centre, and he doesn't miss a tackle. On his days, well, he doesn't have many off days, but when he's at the top of his game, he is one of the best players in the world. And I really think that if the Lions tour does go ahead this year, I think even though it's competitive with the likes of Itoje, Alan Wynne, etc., I think Johnny Gray has to be there to combat those big South African locks.
Well, I know obviously they know about the Lions squad being a small squad to usual. So what second rows would you actually take?
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? With a small squad going, Warren might pick a second row that can play six. Obviously, Itoje's probably nailed down for the tour. If you think of a second row that can play six, I think maybe Courtney Laws is in with a great shout. Adam?
Yeah, well, I think you've got to take Alan Wynne on the tour, haven't you, really? People are saying that he's not what he was. But, okay, he wasn't great in the Autumn Nations Cup. But a year ago, he was Wales' talisman in the World Cup and the Grand Slam. So I think he's got to go. Even if he just plays the midweek games against the tour sides, or the club side, sorry, I think he's got to go just because it's Alan Wynne and he's just such a leader. And I think he'll benefit the group.
Yeah, you got three nailed on to go on the tour, really. I think you got Alan Wynne, you got Itoje and James Ryan. Whether they take 4 or 5, but I think Laws is a great shout. You can play 6, you can play in second row. Do you know what I mean? And then Johnny Gray probably would be in the shout, but I like Joe Launchbury as well. I think he's a really, really good player, been around a while, so I think he could be in with a shout too.
Yeah, there's battles all around the park, isn't there? They could really be one of the best Lions teams if the tour does go ahead that there's ever been. Moving on to our third guest then, and joining us to represent Scotland, we were talking about quality wingers in the Scotland squad, who likes Duan van der Merwe, and they've got Darcy Graham as well. And here was a quality Scotland winger. He's only just retired at the age of 32, and it's Tim Visser. So, Tim, you recently called time on your career at 32. What was the decision behind that? What are you doing now, and how are you enjoying life post-retirement?
Oh, God, a few questions. What was the decision behind it? I think for me, I always knew I wanted to stop before it was too late. And I think I got sort of in that stage of my career where I felt like I wasn't going to consistently hold down a spot at Harlequins. There was a lot of young, exciting wingers coming through, the likes of Caden Murley and Gabriel Ibitoye, who has since moved on to France. But it just kind of got to the point where I knew I wasn't going to be regularly playing anymore. Now, I was still on a pretty punchy contract at the time, so it would have been easy for me to just, sit there for another year and take the money, but it just didn't feel right. And that's probably not something that I would have ever thought I was going to say, but I knew I had other things to do. I wanted to get on with that. I'm now into property development, so I do refurbs, conversions, anything I can get my hands on, really, which has been, an incredible learning curve. But because I knew that was there waiting for me, I think that was also a big factor. They'll be holding bags for a year in training, or just get on with the next part of my life. And that made it so much easier for me to kind of do that, I guess. And
you're Dutch born, but obviously you played international rugby for Scotland. Was this always your goal when you signed for Edinburgh?
No, it wasn't. I've sparsely been labelled a project player before that, but that was really not the case. I was playing for Newcastle at the time, on and off. I was on the bench, I was playing. Sometimes I was loaned out to a local club, and for me, the Edinburgh opportunity was literally just a job. I needed a club. I went up to see Andy Robinson at the time at Edinburgh, and he was, the way he spoke about the club was amazing. He was inspirational. And coming up to Murrayfield and seeing the facilities and whatever else, it just made it a really easy choice for me. And in all honesty, I didn't have many other options, so it was a great move for me personally. But there was certainly nothing, in the background going on with potentially signing to play for Scotland. I mean, I was a million miles away from that, and yeah, I think the intentions were very true at the time.
Yeah, so once you became eligible for Scotland, you played 33 times for them. A lot of those games coming in the Six Nations. Are there any standout Six Nations memories?
Yeah, for me, sadly for you guys, one of my best games was against Wales. I think this was the 2017 Six Nations, and I just had an absolute storm. I stopped a try, I set up a try, and I scored a try, which was the triple, which I've never been able to do ever since again. But no, it was a memorable day. I remember going, and I've told the story many times, and he'll be sick of hearing this, but I went for coffee with my good friend Jamie Roberts the day before, and we're sitting on George Street just having a coffee, and and he goes, "Oh, what's the crack? What do you guys think for tomorrow?" And I said, "Oh, we're quietly confident. We're playing really well, blah, blah, blah." And he goes, "Well, I'll tell you now." And I remember this so clearly. He went, "No one in this squad has ever lost for Scotland." He said. And I went, "All right, okay, fine." And then obviously the next day, he was on the bench, to be fair. On the next day, I had a great game. We all had a great game. We obviously won the game comfortably. And he came on as a sub and actually threw an intercept to me, which was brilliant. But just seeing his face afterwards in the hospitality suite, he was at the bar having a drink, and I remember walking up to me, and like the moment we locked eyes, it was just hilarious because we're obviously we're good friends and we were playing together at the time. But yeah, that was probably my most memorable game. But there's been more. I was also part of that team that beat France for the first time in 8 years. Where Hoggy puts the ball over his head into my hands for the classic try dive try, which I've never done ever since again as well. But it's we did some nice things. I've had incredibly tough times in the Six Nations, obviously playing for Scotland. We've lost games to Ireland and England away, which by huge margins. But I'm a big optimist, so I always look at the good things.
And who are some of the best players you played with and against for Scotland?
With obviously Stuart Hogg has been outstanding. He's been player of the championship in the Six Nations twice, I believe. And he is he can literally do it all. He is Scottish through and through, and he's now also a captain. So name something the guy can't do. He's probably one of the best I've played with in the back three for sure. But the likes of Finn Russell, I remember when he came through and he was just trying all these crazy things and nothing was working. And I just remember thinking, I don't know whether this is going to work out for him because he's just doing so much silly shit. But then you look at him now and he's still doing all this silly shit, but he's so unbelievably good that he does it all and it works. The stuff he does for Racing and the reports coming out of camp this week he's just literally bossing players around, wanting them where he wants them. So I'm really excited to see him play. He's obviously incredibly gifted. But players are coming in different shapes and sizes and different types of talent. I played a lot with guys like Dave Denton, who in one of his first games ran straight over the top of Richie McCall, which is something that don't see a lot. He was literally lying on his back. But yeah, there's a lot of good players that have played for Scotland. And then against the Six Nations, obviously one of the best tournaments in the world, if not the best tournament in the world, in my opinion. And there's players of immense quality in every team. I look at some of my close friends, Danny Kerr for England, who's been outstanding. Jamie Roberts, I said earlier, Brian O'Driscoll. Name any Northern Hemisphere star, and I would have had the privilege of playing against them. So it's almost too hard to name, even one or two of them. But no, it's been an amazing journey.
And obviously, with the Six Nations starting this weekend, the Scotland squad's been announced. We've got a few players to look out for in the squad.
Yeah, I don't think any huge surprises. I think Hamish Watson has been outstanding in that back row, and he's been outstanding for a number of years, not just for Scotland, but he was always amazing for Edinburgh as well. But I think since the World Cup, Jamie Ritchie coming through in that back row as well, just the work rate. I played golf with him the other day. He's got that same work rate on the golf course as well. It's never ending. It just never tires. So yeah, those two probably the stars that we already know in that Scotland. But what if Cammy Redpath gets a go? That'd be. I mean, for obvious reasons, it'd be brilliant because the English are losing out on him. But another good friend of mine, James Lang, kind of plays in that same position. So if either of those two gets a shot, I'll be delighted to keep an eye on them.
And are there any players you think that are unlucky to miss out on the squad?
Yeah, various, to be honest. I think Sammy Adago-Klein at Exeter he's been really good over the last season. So seeing him miss out has been a shame. Similarly probably for Duncan Weir, who when got given the chance in the autumn, I thought played one of his best games, and then subsequently got dropped for Van der Waal, which I thought was more political than anything else. That they wanted to lock him down and make him Scottish qualified. So I know why it happened, but I think that was a harsh one. I think defensively he was amazing. He orchestrated the game really well, as he's been doing for Worcester. And I saw that he's just signed back for Glasgow. So yeah, he's probably up there as well, I'd say, to be really unlucky.
And Scotland last season, it was a bit of a mixed bag, really. They finished 4th in the Six Nations. They obviously beat Wales and beat France, and and a mixed bag as well in the Autumn Nations Cup, 2 wins and 2 defeats. What do you think of Scotland's squad right now, and what do you think their ambitions will be for the Six Nations?
Well, so I think that's probably the tricky one. And, we could literally be talking about any Scotland season right now, some amazing games and then lose the ones that they really need to go and win. So consistency has always been the issue. And I had a chat the other day with a journalist from the rugby paper about the same thing. And I still think it all comes down to depth. And we just talk about some of the stars that Scotland have and that are going to be playing for Scotland this Six Nations. But then you see some of the injuries we have, predominantly in the front row with the hooker situation. And suddenly you've got, hookers coming in that, in all honesty, no one's ever heard of before, which is, it's not me being derogatory, because they might well be very good players, but it just shows that when some of these frontline players drop out, suddenly you're dealing with a complete unknown, and that can be a good or a bad thing, but that makes consistency really tricky. And I think, looking forward to the Six Nations, yes, the autumn was inconsistent, but it all just depends again on not only how they keep the squad fit and clean of COVID. That's a huge thing as well, obviously, but also how they manage to gel that team together. And I think, as always, we've got huge reasons to be optimistic. There's some great rugby to be played, and I think going over to England for that first Calcutta Cup match, which I'm actually presenting in Rugby Bash for. We're starting this virtual Zoom thing, Rugby Bash. Find it on Twitter or Instagram, and I'm doing that particular game with Chris Robshaw. So we're going to be in people's living room talking about the game, presenting the game, lots of merchandise, hampers being delivered, whatever else. But that's a great opportunity for Scotland to really set out, their stall going over to Twickenham, which is a tough place to go. And you'll soon find out what some of these boys coming into the squad are actually made of, because, that's a real make or break situation. But yeah, I mean, I can make some sort of plan here of how I think it's going to go, but it's probably not going to happen. So I think there's almost no point.
I just want to touch upon your point there about your Rugby Bash project, Legends in Living Room. Do you want to tell us a bit more about what it is and who you've got on?
Yeah, it's just, I think it's a real reaction onto the current climate. So, people that would have gone into the hospitality before games or, the stadium experience obviously can't do that at the moment. So, we put our heads together, and together with some of the other ex-players and still current players, we decided to bring this to people. So for, you can buy tickets online, find Rugby Bash on Twitter or Instagram. And basically, if you select the boxes, you could send this huge box of booze and food and merchandise by our sponsors, which is actually really good. So we've got Glenturret, Heineken, Rex Club News, the Caps, obviously, Snackfully providing the snacks. So there's lots of stuff in there. And that comes to your house before the game obviously starts. Then we go live. So for every game, we've got England-Scotland with Chris Robshaw. Then the next game, let me just tell you now, is Johnny Beattie, Jamie Roberts for Scotland-Wales. Then for Wales-England, we've got Gareth Anscombe and Mike Brown. For England-France, we've got Nick Easter, Minty and Benjamin Kaiser. And for the last game, Ireland-England, we've got Ian Madigan and Danny Kerr. So the names are brilliant, and it's all fully interactive. So during the game, you can ask them questions. They'll talk a lot of shite with you, as they always do. But the closest people can get to some type of hospitality. I think it's well priced. I'm looking forward to it. And I think it's the only thing we can do right now. So I hope people sign up to it.
Okay. And the Calcutta Cup next week, England, Scotland, the big one. How important is that game?
Yeah, I think it's always an important one for the Scots because they hate the English. It's an easy one. I think everyone hates the English, and it's a big one, but not even so much for the Calcutta Cup. Obviously, Scotland have done relatively well, won it 2 years in a row, and then obviously lost it again last year. But it's not even so much about that. It's about the fact that if you pick up points on the road in the Six Nations, you put yourself in a really good position. And if you can do that away to England, I mean, that'd be just a great start for the Scots, because like we just said, the consistency really is the key. But if you manage to get a great win like that, that'll really rev the engines, and that'll set the team up so well for the rest of the season for the Six Nations. So I think in many respects it's really important. But conversely, you've also, if you do lose that game, you can't hang your hat on it. It's not all lost, because it's an away game. You go and pick up points at home. You can put yourself back into it. But it'll be an interesting one. I'm really interested to see what happens during the game. I mean, Scotland have done really well against England in recent years, and with the whole COVID thing, Eddie Jones under a bit of pressure. He's only got 28 players with him in his COVID bubble, so that puts a bit of pressure on things. He's got a couple of injuries in that front row. Kyle Sinclair banned once again, which doesn't help. But they're a formidable team. They're one of the best teams in world rugby, and we know that. A real tasty encounter, as Stuart Hogg labelled it, and it's a very emotional encounter for both sides, I think.
I just wanted to touch on as well, obviously Scotland have lost yourself and Tommy Seymour, but they have blooded some new wingers in Darcy Graham and Duan van der Merwe, and both of them look the real deal, don't they? What are your thoughts on that?
They'll probably replace us with better versions. I mean, certainly Duan is looking like the real package. I think initially when he came to Edinburgh, he wasn't great under the high ball, and defensively he wasn't probably as solid as a top flight winger needs to be. But he seems to have worked on that, and I think recently he's looking really, really solid. And apart from the fact that he can break tackles, make breaks, which almost every good winger can do, he is getting very close to being a very complete package. So yeah, that's really exciting. And then on the other side, the pocket rocket is brilliant. The stuff he does is, I've just been in awe of him playing for Edinburgh, but then taking that to the international stage. The try he scored against England was just nippy and gnarly, but he's just he's so powerful, and he's not very big at all, which just shows that anyone can play in. You have the right attitude, and he's good defensively. He's surprisingly good under the high ball for such a small guy, but again, I'd like to say, I think France are very good at the moment. I think they seem to have been set loose, and they're playing some brilliant rugby. But I think Gareth Edwards.
Sean Edwards,
sorry, coming in as defensive coach. Sorry, I was a complete mind blank. Sean Edwards coming in as defense coach was just that little piece of the puzzle they were missing, and I think they've got a very realistic chance.
Wooden spoon.
Wales. Probably
right, move on. Player of the tournament.
Oh God. I mean, probably the French scrum half. He's been phenomenal. But I don't know. It's a hard one, because it's very reliant on how well your team does. So it'd be too hard for me to make a prediction. But I would also love to say Finn Russell. Actually, I think Finn Russell's got it in.
Breakthrough player of the tournament.
Kemi Ratpath.
And if you could take one player from one of the other nations to go play for Scotland, who would it be?
I mean, if Manu Tuilagi was playing, and I think he's injured again, you know, you would want him at 13 for Scotland, would you? Or even at 12 with Hugh Jones at 13, that would be. But now I'm undermining my breakthrough player of the year. This is not working out. No, I mean, I think someone like that, you know, to give you some real firepower would be, would be lovely.
Hello. Moving on to England then, and obviously in last year's Six Nations, they only lost one game to France, but ended up winning the tournament and ended up winning the Autumn Nations Cup as well. Boys, what do you think of their team at the moment, and what do you think their chances are for this tournament?
Well, obviously England are a really good team. Everyone knows that. They got to the World Cup final. They've got a world-class coach. I know people in Wales especially don't like to admit that. I like to see Eddie Jones as a bit of a pantomime villain, but you know, he is a really good coach on the face of things. I fancy them to win it, to be fair. It's between them and France, but I think they're playing France at home, so obviously there's no crowds, but it's still home advantage, so I do fancy England to win it.
Yeah, they're strong side, like I said, but I think I'm going to go for France to pick them. I think the game at the end of the autumn between them both, I know France has a second string side, I'll give them a game. But yeah, they're strong side. They've got a massive pool players to pick from. And I think they're going with a smaller squad, but there's still some outstanding players in there.
Just how good is Eddie Jones, Adam? Would you say he's the best coach in the world?
He's definitely up there. That's for certain. Like, look what he did with Japan in the 2015 World Cup. Obviously, everyone knows they beat South Africa, but they also won 2 other group games. And I think they're the first ever team to win 3 out of 4 games and not go through. And with a country like Japan, okay, they've improved a lot now, but before that, no one expected anything from them. So, and that's why he got the England job off, basically. I know he joined the Stormers. I don't think he even coached the game for them because England came calling and he joined England. So, yeah, really good coach. Credit where it's due.
Moving on then, Tobias, who's your one to watch for England?
Yeah, I've gone with Exeter centre, Henry Slade. I think he's outstanding player, European champion, Gallagher Premiership champion. He can cover 10, 12, but he mainly plays 13. He's got a left boot on him, great hands, good side step. Good away, I think he's outstanding. I do think he's an underrated player as well. I rate him highly.
Ad?
Yeah, I've gone for Johnny May. He's obviously a quality player. And I think he's one of those players that's improving with age. Like, he's 30 now, but his performances in the Autumn Nations Cup were brilliant. That try he scored against Ireland, that famous try, yeah, it's fantastic. So he's my pick.
I think with Johnny May, when he first came through, he was like all speed and not much rugby knowledge. But the more fair play, the more he's played for England, he's picked up that knowledge and experience, and he does look a really good player.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, he does seem to be getting better with age, which is rare, especially for a winger, because normally once I hit 30, they start slowing down a bit. But no, he seems to have improved, so fair play to him.
My pick, I've gone for Jack Willis then, the Wasps back row. Obviously, he was left out with the original England squad, but Sam Underhill's withdrawn because of injury, and that gives him a massive chance to come in. He's the Jackal King, really, of the Gallagher Premiership. He wins, 4 or 5 turnovers every game. And it'll be interesting to see where he fits in the England team, whether he goes straight in and takes Underhill's position. I know Mark Wilson's in the squad, so he could maybe start at 6 and Curry move to 7. I'd definitely have Willis in. Willis can cover the whole back row as well. And, well, you see the damage he does for Wasps combined with Tom Young, and it'll be really good to see him. He played really well in the autumn, and it'll be really well to see him continue that run of form for England. So obviously the England squad has been announced, and there's been a lot of chopping and changes between players coming in and coming out through injury and suspensions and that. 2 uncapped players have been called up, Paolo Udogwu and Harry Randall. Tobias, I know you're a fan of Harry Randall. What will he bring to the England squad?
First of all, energy. He's quick, he's sharp, good at the breakdown. The one thing about Randall is game control. Don't know how good it'll be because Eddie does play different rugby to what Pat Lam plays with Bristol, but the energy, the pace, the quick ball you bring to that team can give England really like quick go forward ball.
And what about Paolo Adogwu? How do you think he'll play much for England? And how well do you think he'll get on?
Yeah, I hope to see him play, to be honest, because he's been impressive in the Gallagher Premiership this season. Be nice to see him play. I think maybe he'll play against Italy, which is normally the game countries sort of blood their youngsters in, because 9 times out of 10 you get the win against them. So yeah, hopefully get to see him play, and I think given the chance, he'll really do well.
Yeah, he was Italian qualified, of course. Maybe, obviously, he's been playing really well for Wasps, and I don't want to knock him one bit, but maybe there was a bit of politics with him getting called up as well, because you think if he didn't make the England squad, Italy may have come calling and might have played for them. Also, with Adogwu as well, he's been playing really well at 13 for Wasps, so it remains to be seen where he plays, especially with the likes of Tuolangi left out. If he maybe could slot in at 13, if Eddie wants to go back to Farrell at 10.
Yeah, obviously, well, he can slot in at 13, but you've got the likes of Daly, I know he's seen as can play 13, and like you said, Ollie Lawrence and Slade, but you know, he's utility play, he's deserved his spot, and the only thing you can think of is if he played for Italy, I think he'd get a lot more international caps than he will in the England squad.
So we talked about the players that came in. Adam, who was a notable omission for you from the England squad?
Probably Kyle Sinclair. Obviously, he's had his disciplinary issues before, and he's currently banned at the moment, but it's only for the first week of the Six Nations, so it remains to be seen if he's called up afterwards. But yeah, maybe that's just Eddie trying to prove a point to him that he really needs to work on his discipline to be involved in the squad again.
Tobias, was there anyone missing from the England squad who you thought maybe should have made the cut?
Yeah, I think I got a few. I think Sam Simmons, back row, probably the best player in the Premiership for me on form. He's unlucky. I don't know what he's done wrong really with Eddie, but he can't seem to get any call up there. And also, I know I spoke about high Randall, but Ben Spencer, Bath scrum half, outstanding player. Again, probably one of the best scrum halves in the league. I can see why Ben Youngs is still in the squad for his experience. I know he's not far from 100 caps now as well. But honestly, I do think next year, I think Spencer will have to be England's number 1 scrum half.
Yeah, Tobias, obviously you mentioned Sam Simmons. His brother, Joe Simmons, OBE, has also missed out. He's already a double winning captain, obviously was awarded that OBE last year. At the outside half position, you got the likes of Marcus Smith and Jacob Umanga as well. What do you think of the outside halves that have missed out?
Yeah, I think it is harsh. You know, Joe Simmons getting, you said, double winning captain next to, you know, the top of the Premiership. Well, not this season, I don't think at the minute, but do you mean they've won in the last few years? Umanga's in.
Yeah, obviously, we'll take that up now with our next guest, a man who knows a lot about playing in the outside half position, especially for England. He won 5 caps, including a memorable victory over the All Blacks on his debut. Our next guest is Freddie Burns.
And looking at your international career, what's some of the best memories in England shirt for you?
Well, there's only a couple, isn't there? There's not too many. There's not too many to choose from, mate. I think I played for England 5 times. I think I was in the squad for probably 3 years. I think it was. I was in the squad, and great memories. I definitely feel like I potentially could have had a few more caps, maybe. Obviously, that's part of that is my choices and sort of my form and that, and others have been just coaches' personal preferences and stuff like that. But the 5 caps I've got, obviously the debut sticks out. That's the obvious one. To beat the All Blacks first up. I remember James Haskell coming up to me on the at the final whistle, and to use cleaner language than his, he said, yeah, I think it was something like his 52nd cap, whatever. He goes, it's taken me 52 caps to beat you. And you've done it in 1. So I probably should have retired there from international rugby. But no, I think everything. I'm one thing I'm very, very lucky with my caps is obviously to play the All Blacks at Twickenham and beat them. And then I had the experience of going to Argentina for 2 tests over there, which we won. And Argentina is an unbelievable place to tour and play against the Pumas. And then obviously represent England down in New Zealand twice, to play against the All Blacks at Eden Park with everything that Eden Park is and the history and all that, and to come so close to getting a result there as well was key. So, you know, I've not got that many to choose from, so I guess I can put them all in the same bracket. I just feel very fortunate to sort of have those 5 opportunities that I did.
Quality over quantity.
Apparently so, yeah. I'm not sure if that works with caps. It definitely doesn't work for the cash that you get each cap, but other than that, it's you know, like I said, I think one thing that I've always been pretty hard on myself through my career, and I think one thing you got to realise is, you know, 5 caps is 5 more than a lot of people that wanted 1. Do you know what I mean? And it was a dream to play for England and all those cliches. So, you know, do I feel a little bit like I underachieved internationally by only getting 5 caps? Yeah, but at the same time, you know, those 5 caps are there now, and you know, no one can take them away from me. So I'm immensely proud of them.
Yeah, as you mentioned, you got 5 caps. So who are the best players you played with and against while playing for England?
While I was playing for England, oh Christ. I think for me, I was fortunate to have him as a club mate as well. But Manu Tuolangi for me is different breed, you know, especially that first cap of mine against the All Blacks, where there's one where I think he like fends McCaw, or like bumps Carter, fends McCaw, and then puts Ashley in for the try. And, you know, for me, Manu's one of those who's been very hard dealt with injuries. He's also, you know, he plays under immense amount of pressure. He comes back from a 9-month layoff and everyone expects him to run through everyone straight away. But yeah, for me, Manu on his day is unplayable. And, you know, obviously in those squads, you've had the likes of Owen Farrell, who's gone on to do great things as a great player. But yeah, and I really enjoyed playing with Richard Wigglesworth and Dave Strettle, actually, especially out in Argentina. We had a good little group, and someone like Stretz, for example, is I think he was fiercely underrated when he was a player, and yeah, he was a good boy too.
So moving on then, the England squad's been announced. What do you think are some of the names in there, and who are your standouts in the England squad?
I think that it's such a England almost have an embarrassment of riches at the minute in every position. I think anyone can argue. For me, being a fly half, you see the names that are in there. You see Marcus Smith missing out. You see Joe Simmons missing out, and you can easily stake a claim for both of them with their club form this year. But for me, I feel like with the fly half debate, especially in England, it's Eddie Jones is a Farrell and Ford man. There is two guys. So, you know, why does Jacob Umunga come in the squad and expect to start that first game of the Six Nations? Probably not. So you're kind of that third position. You're probably better off having someone who's not going to upset the apple cart and come in and train hard and learn, rather than come in and try and ruffle a few feathers and expect to start. But stand out for me, I'm interested to see how Paolo Udogwu goes. Obviously, no, I trained with him. He was in the academy at Leicester when I was there, and he was a specimen. But he kind of had like he's a great kid, and I love Paolo to bits. But he had that kind of attitude where it was sort of like not a bad attitude by any stretch, but an attitude where you kind of thought, oh, would he push on or wouldn't he? And then Leicester released him, and you know, he's obviously gone to Wasps, and to see him in the form that he's in at the minute. And the best thing about him is he's just having a laugh, isn't he? Yeah. Like, you just see him sort of taking the piss, really, which is kind of. So I'll be interested to see if he gets a shot and how he goes. I think he'll do unbelievably well. But yeah, so he's probably the standout for me that I'm looking forward to seeing. You can tell I'm a fly half, so I picked no forwards.
And you mentioned the doggo, but what do you think about the other new boy in the squad, in Harry Randall?
Yeah, I mean, he's been classed for Bristol, you know, and it's good to see guys like that are playing so well for their clubs get a nod. Obviously, there's the whole Ben Spencer debate, isn't there, with scrum halves and that. But no, he's been class. I think the main thing for Harry Randall will be that sort of driving the game and demanding things of the forwards in front of him. But you know, he's another one who's gone on at Bristol, and he's a key part to their success at the minute, and good on him for getting the call up. So a real exciting player. I fully expect to see Ben Youngs in that starting jersey, and obviously I'm not sure how far off he is 100. Is he just need 1 or 2 caps or something? I think it is. So I expect him to get that number 9 jersey. But for me, it'd be great. I'd love to see your Dogwoos, your Harry Randalls, and those on the bench, and seeing them getting on for 20 minutes and just letting loose, hopefully, because England, yes, they're winning, but let's be honest, it's not a great spectacle to watch, really. It's not that real exciting rugby. It's winning rugby, and that's what you want at international. But I'd love to see those guys get on and bring a little bit of sparkle to the team.
Yeah, that leads on to my next question then, which is, what do you think of England's performances in the autumn? Obviously, they won the Autumn Nations Cup, but they did struggle against, a weakened French team in the final.
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, they'll say they won it. Like, that's all that counts. And, that whole cliche of winning ugly and when things aren't going for you. But no, I feel like, I feel like England do need to develop a more attacking game. I do think. I think they've got the resources there to do it, and I just can't quite see why it's not really coming to fruition on the weekends. That said, I think for me personally, especially looking forward to the Six Nations, France for me is someone who you get those teams that you pay good money to go and watch, and France are one of them at the minute. So I felt it was good. I felt that Autumn Nations Cup was kind of a funny old competition, though, wouldn't it? Because it's international rugby, and it's great to have, but it was kind of like a bit of a fill-in competition, wouldn't it? And a lot of teams, you even look at the French team that went to that played in the final. Missing so many players because they're playing for their club. So you'll never belittle international rugby, even if it's a friendly or whatever they call it. But I fully expect England to be better in this Six Nations, and it should be a good competition.
Obviously, you never did get to play in the Six Nations, but why is the Six Nations different, and why is it special to European fans, and especially the Wales v England game, and what does that mean to the English?
Yeah, first of all, that's one thing I think I'd always be gutted is not. I was on the bench against Italy. I picked up an injury the 2013 season, the week before. Managed to get back fit for the last game against Italy, and was an unused sub. So always be pretty gutted to never play a Six Nations games. But I think the Six Nations is so special because we all know a Scottish bloke, we all know an English bloke, we all know an Irish bloke. Do you know what I mean? Whether that's at work, whether it's at the local rugby club, whether that's whatever it is. And it's that art of being able to sit in a pub. Well, obviously not now, but normally it's the art of being able to sit in a pub next to your mates who support a different country and have that banter and that rivalry of those that are nearest and dearest to you. And I think that for me is the most special thing. And also, I always say that a lot of the time rivalries come from people you respect more rather than the opposite. Obviously you can have the easy, we hate each other, all that, but actually underneath it all, there's a huge respect. You take England, Wales, there's a huge respect between the players. Obviously a lot of players mingle with each other. I played with my fair share of Welshmen in my time. And those people you respect are always the ones that you want to get one over with most. So I think that's what really makes it special. And just that stick that you can give your mates at the rugby club or down the pub or on a Zoom quiz night or whatever it is nowadays. It's got to be because of this shit. But that's what makes it special for me. Just the fact that there's a real familiarity with the competition and your opposition, really.
And talking about rivalries and playing the other countries, your brother Billy is in the Ireland squad now. How good is it to see him on the international scene?
Oh, it's amazing. I think, I've said in a couple of other interviews in the past that for me, he reached a stage in his career where he was at Gloucester and he was playing really well for Gloucester. He was a key part to them. I think they just lost when they lost to Cardiff in Bilbao in the Challenge Cup, and he played really well in that game and was a key part to getting them there. And suddenly they brought in Cipriani, which you won't hold against anyone. Like Sips is a class operator, and you see all the impact that he had in his time at Gloucester. But for Bill, it was a case of, he's still in contract. Does he stay loyal to Gloucester and stay there and become a frustrated second choice 10 and probably then not struggle to get clubs, but you're always then a second choice. You're trying to step out of Cipriani's shadow and make a name for yourself? Or does he go to Ireland where he's Irish qualified and Ulster come in and try and have a shot there? And he's gone to Ulster. He's been unbelievable in the games that he's played. He's grown. When Ian Henderson's not captain, he tends to lead the team out as well. So he's grown as a bloke and as a player over there, and he's fully deserving of his shot to play for Ireland. So for me, I'm probably a bit more of an Irish fan at the minute. My granddad was Irish. I never met him, but obviously I know how proud it makes my old man to see Bill play in that jersey, and for us all as well to have another brother play for international rugby is class. I just hate having to get up at 3:00 in the morning to watch a little bit.
When you were at Bath, you played with quite a few Welsh boys like Jimmy Roberts, Faletau, Priestley, I think Webb had a stint there as well. What were those boys like to play with?
Oh, class. I think they're all class operators. I don't know how the Welsh do it. Small country, but they seem to just breed rugby talent. Obviously competed with Reece, real class operator and everything he does. Toby Faletau for me is just a different breed. He's in the Manu Tuolangi sort of category of players. I think he's world 15 standard on his day. Obviously, again, slightly plagued with injuries and that, but he's a guy who's, he's unplayable on his day. Obviously, Doc was good. He's a hero, isn't he? He's a blooming Welsh legend. So he had a good little trip to Ibiza with the Doc, as we call him. But no, like I said, Reece Webb came. He was a great lad. There's loads of great talent in Wales, and all the boys are good. They love getting in shape and eating clean and fake tan and all that stuff. All the cliches are true. But no, I think they're great players, and like you say, just great blokes as well. I think very, very down.
And I've got some Six Nations predictions here for you. Quick fire questions.
Here we go then. Here we go, France.
Wooden spoon.
Italy. I was gonna say, no, Italy.
It's all right. You didn't have to say it. We can see it.
Yeah.
Player of the tournament.
I'd love to say Billy Burns, but I don't think he'll start in front of Sexton. Player of the tournament, I'm going to go Dupont.
Breakthrough player.
Let's back a Dogwu. I'm going to back him.
And if you can have anyone else from one of the other teams in the English team, who would you pick?
Oh, what a question. Who would I pick? I know I've said his name already, but I think Dupont at the minute is just like hell of a player, like unbelievable. You're not seeing like
everyone we spoke to said Dupont, I think. So.
Yeah, the cheekbones on the man alone. Get him into the cheekbones. You know what I mean? I think he's just set a whole new standard of scrum half play, and he's almost changing the game from nine's point of view. So yeah, I think you take Dupont, and that way I sit on the fence nicely. I'm not going to have anyone calling me up giving me shit. But yeah.
So after Wales play England at home, then they move on to Rome to play Italy. And obviously, Italy have struggled in the Six Nations recently. There was a time, there maybe still is a time, where Georgia have been talked about in replacing them. Boys, what do you think's wrong with Italy? And do you think Georgia would honestly be a better inclusion to the Six Nations?
No, I think Italy are probably slightly better than them. And in regards to what's gone wrong, it's really hard to tell. They've had some quality coaches over the years, like Conor O'Shea, etc. And they did seem to be getting better. Like, I think maybe the start of the decade, like between 2010 and 2014, they were picking up a few wins here and there. And Nick Mallet. But yeah, they just haven't kicked on. And even when club sides have improved, like I think Treviso did well a few seasons ago. I think they got to the Guinness Pro 14 quarterfinals. But the national team didn't improve. And now Treviso are struggling again. So it remains to be seen about the national team. I did think they improved a little bit in the autumn. They played well against us. I think they were winning with about 25 minutes to go before we scored a few tries. So yeah, it was good to see them improve, but I still can't see them winning a game in this Six Nations.
Yeah, the whole Italy-Georgia debate is a tough one to call, really, because obviously in the autumn they would have played each other. Only for one of the Fiji games, I think, were called off. So then they ended up playing the bottom playoff, didn't they? It's a tough one, but Italy struggled over the years. There's been glimpses of improvement, but I really can't see them stepping up and really like making a name for themselves. Six Nations, like constantly beating someone. Like this year, if they're going to beat anyone, it'll be Wales, but I still can't see that happening.
Moving on then, who are your players to watch for the Italy team?
Yeah, I've gone for the Benetton winger Monty Ioane. I think he's been good for Benetton. Like, he was one of the reasons why they improved a few seasons ago, and now he's still there. He's qualified through residency. So yeah, if he gets a chance, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. He's big, he's powerful, and he scores plenty of tries. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
Tobias?
Yeah, I've gone with Benetton outside half, Paolo Garbisi. He's only 20. He's talked about a lot out in Italy. I think they rate him highly out there. He's had a few games that he scored in the autumn in the Six Nations game against Ireland. There was a lovely try towards the end of the game. I think Italy have never really, a while now, had a 10 that's kept his place for a while. But hopefully with Garbisi now, he's a youngster, but they like the look of him. Hopefully they can have a run of games where they keep the same, or hopefully the same halfbacks and give him a good run.
Yeah, I've gone for young Stephen Varney, the scrum half from Gloucester. Obviously, he's Welsh qualified as well and English, but Italy called him up, and I really didn't expect him to be playing much for Italy in the autumn, but he had a few games, a couple of starts as well, I believe, and he looks the real deal from scrum half. Really dangerous attacking player. I mean, I watched him play against Wales under-20s a few years ago, and the damage that he did for Italy was fantastic, and he really controls the game well as well, and he does the same for Gloucester as well. Sort of in that Harry Randall mode as Mulder's just takes the game to the opposition, does really well. That said then, boys, where do you think Italy will finish up this year?
I think they'll get the wooden spoon again. Well, I hope they do, because if they don't get it, we'll get it. So, no, in all seriousness, I can't see him winning a game. So,
yeah, same year. I think he'll probably give us a game, but I can't see him getting a W. So,
and with Italy as well, we might see Sergio Parise appear for them at some point. Obviously, he's not in the squad, but he still hasn't had his farewell game yet.
Only been trying 2 years.
How good of a servant to Italian rugby has Parise been, and just how good of a player is he?
Oh, obviously, he's been fantastic for them. Like, he single-handedly carried them through games and kept the score respectable. Sometimes they've been getting, they've been losing by a heavy margin, and he's kept going, kept trying to do things. So yeah, I think he's a rugby legend. So in general, he's a rugby legend. So for Italian rugby, he's been huge and deserves all the praise he gets.
Yeah, he's, like I say, he's been outstanding. So he does deserve a good send-off, hopefully. We'd like to see fans there as well when he has his last game. But I think if he was in any other team, I think he'd be known as more of a rugby legend. I know he's known as a legend anyway, but I think he doesn't get the recognition he deserves because he's in the elite side. But honestly, he's been an outstanding player.
And the captaincy's been taken over by Luca Bigi, the hooker. And I'm really impressed with him. I think he's a sort of an old-fashioned hooker. He's nasty. You saw against Wales. He was getting stuck into the Wales front row. And I think Italy needs someone like that as a skipper. Like Parise, although he had the skills and tricks as well, like he wasn't afraid to do the dirty work as well. And that Bigi looks sort of in a similar mold, maybe not quite as skillful. That's maybe why he's in the front row.
Yeah, well, you need leaders, and if you're not a leader verbally, you need to lead on the pitch, and I think Bigi is one of them. He steps forward, and if the rest of the Italian side see the things he do, they'll step up and do the same. So hopefully that'll be a good thing for him.
Yeah, moving on to our next guest then. It's our second fly half in a row. He's Irish born, but ended up playing for Italy. It's a fantastic story. I'll let him tell you that himself. It's Ian McKinley.
yeah, we got in contact with, they were known as the IRB, and it's now World Rugby. And yeah, the goggles became, protective eyewear rugby goggles became available in 2014. Grabbed one of the first pair, started playing with the club that I was coaching. So the lowest level of Italian rugby. So you can imagine what sort of, fitness levels were amassed by some of the players there. But like, it was good for me just to get back and get muddy and, feel tired and have a beer after a game. So yeah, managed to work my way up the ranks through Italian rugby. And subsequently then in 2017, because I'd lived there, the rule is obviously the 3-year rule, the residency rule. Because I hadn't played for Ireland at the senior level, I could represent Italy. So in 2017, having moved over in 2012, but I represented Italy and went on to play 9 times up until my last game was last year in the pre-World Cup game. So that's sort of in a very small, in a short space of time. That's basically what's happened.
And looking forward to next weekend, what are some of your best Six Nations memories?
Yeah, I can't say too many because I never won a Six Nations game. So no, I think whenever you play, sort of the first of everything is obviously pretty special. So we played against, I think the first game was against Scotland. So to arrive at Murrayfield, now played obviously a few times against Edinburgh there, but it's different when the stadium's full, and sort of to get the bagpipes playing in front of your bus, sort of sends, your hairs on the back of your neck stand up. So that would obviously be pretty special, but still frustrated, never actually had that elusive win.
And yeah, as you mentioned, you've got 9 caps for Italy. Who are some of the best players you played with and against on the international scene?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to play with a few and against a few. So I think obviously the standout from an Italian point of view would obviously have to be Sergio Parisse. All the plaudits he rightly deserves through his whole career. I mean, he's still going. I mean, I watched Toulon Racing there last week, and he's still doing things that are, amazing. But if you saw the professional levels that he takes before, during, and after training, there's you can see why at his age he's still performing to the level he's at. No, I think what other players? I mean, certainly even playing against Owen Farrell, sort of his ruthlessness, and even just when I was at Leinster, I went from school, which was a non-rugby school, to training up against a backline which had Chris Whitaker, Felipe Contaponi, Gordon Darcy, Brian O'Driscoll, Luke Fitzgerald, Gervin Dempsey, Rob Carney, Shane Horgan, Issa Nathewa. It's a bit different from school level. So no, I've been pretty lucky to play with some pretty special players.
And the Italy squad's just been announced then. From your inside perspective, who are some of the players to look out for in that squad?
Yeah, I think everyone, it's probably easy for me to talk about the out half position, but I think everyone's really excited about Paolo Garbisi. I think he's proven in the short space of time that he's a serious talent. He's got a real mature head on his shoulders. Obviously, I mean, I don't beat around the bush. We know Italy. It's not, results are not good enough, and we need to improve. And you can understand the frustrations from fans, but trust me, if fans are feeling it, players are feeling it 10 times harder. It's tough when you get into a rut, and it's almost like when Leinster started winning. It's like the All Blacks, you just get into a habit of winning, and unfortunately we're in the state of not getting that elusive victory. So I want to say, I think best opportunity will be against Wales this year. Obviously, I have to be careful who I'm talking to, but Wales.
Sorry, we all agree. We all agree.
Okay, good. We're on the same page. But I think Wales are there for the taking. I think Italy, the scoreline didn't reflect one bit the previous game. So I think that could be a serious opportunity to get a win there.
And do you feel there are any players unlucky to miss out on the Six Nations squad?
Yeah, I think obviously the main one would be Minozzi, but obviously that's not due to selection. That's just due to him maybe needing a break, and he is a young man, and he's just moved over to England, and he didn't speak much English moving over there. So you can imagine it's I can understand me moving over to Italy as well in 2012 without the language. It can be a fairly lonely place and fairly difficult. And I think, you know, people realize rugby players are really fortunate enough, you know, professional rugby players are really fortunate to be able to continue playing. But it's extremely difficult when the only time you're allowed outside is to train. You can't, you know, particularly in Italy at the moment, you can't, you know, go out for a coffee. You can't, you know, you're very much resigned to the fact that you're in your hotel room. You go out, you do gym, you do pitch, and then you come back. So it can be mentally taxing. But you know, I suppose some players are back in, like Federico Ruccia's back in. I really, he missed out on the last squad, and I really rate him. He's got something different. He's not a physically imposing man. You know, he wouldn't be someone who, you know, would physically dominate you. Maybe someone like, you know, in an English or a French pack, but he's got some seriously, his line out ability, his handling, his decision making, his skill set. You know, I would hope he gets a good run.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Italy finished bottom last year, and they have for the last few seasons. But they did seem to improve in the Autumn Nations Cup, being really competitive against Wales and Scotland. Do you think they're improving?
Yeah, I think it's a results-based industry, isn't it? So it's all well and good talking about better performances, and we, you know, even my time with Conor O'Shea and Mike Cat, you know, we wouldn't. You go to win a game. I mean, that's what you prepare your whole life for, is to win games. You prepare the whole week to make sure, you know, what particular things are Wales doing, what things can we manipulate them. So there's no, you know, yes, performances maybe, particularly at the start, you know, when we lost, was I think 42-0 in Cardiff, you know, that's not a good start to any Six Nations campaign. So, you know, I suppose from when Franco started off in that game to when they last played Wales, obviously, I think Italy obviously got a little bit better, and Wales, there was obviously a big decline there. But I think it's encouraging that you've got Paolo Garbisi, you've got, you know, Cannone, you've got Michele Lambero, who, you know, is very highly thought after in Benetton, who's coming through. So there are a lot of young guys. Even the front row, you've got Fischietti, you've got Zilocchi. These guys are very, very good players, but they are very young and raw, and it takes, you know, a good long while to get up to speed with international rugby and to get that. I mean, Alwyn Jones doesn't become a phenomenon overnight. It takes, you know, a good number of caps, you know, 20 caps at least potentially, to really understand what international rugby is all about. So I think giving them the opportunity is definitely the right thing to do.
Do you think, touching on that then, do you think, apart from Wales, Italy are, obviously, you feel Italy are improving, but then the problem is everyone else is improving as well. So it's sort of about getting that lucky break, isn't it? And having a good game, catching like someone on their off day and getting that win, and then that inspires everyone else.
Yeah, well, you need to make your lucky break, I suppose. And the fact is that, yeah, you're right. I mean, the standard, and Conor would have alluded to this a lot, of the, you know, back maybe in the 90s, the early 2000s, you didn't have this standard of team that, you know, and the facilities, the structure in other nations, unfortunately, and I know because I've lived it for 8 years, is well below in comparison to the other nations. So there's no real training center or anything like that. So where you've got, you know, Ireland, you've got England, that are, you know, specialized places where you go and train. So, you know, those things take time even just to get, and then get funding for, and then whenever you get it, it takes time just to build up a culture in that. So, like, I obviously am probably very biased when it comes to Italian rugby, but I see players. I mean, I name a list of Paolo Garbisi, Matteo Menozzi, Michele Campagnaro, Leonardo Gheraldini, who's just retired, but Alessandro Zani. Like, these guys, you know, any of these guys on their given day could start a game, I would argue, for a Wales, a Scotland. I'm talking about in their prime now. Obviously, Paolo is only 20; he's got a way to go. But, you know, the fact that Italy does produce these players would signify that there is a huge amount of talent. And I think probably cutting over a little bit the discussion between Georgia and Italy, I think you still see that there is a technical difference, and I still think there is that little bit of a gap, and it's just Italy are stuck at the minute. You saw it in the World Cup whenever we played Canada. There was a 40 plus point difference, and it could have been more. And that's sort of the gap. You know, your Canadas, your Georgias, and I think Italy are ahead of that. It's just the gap between Italy and the rest is sort of still quite substantial. But you only have to go back to our Six Nations a couple of years ago in 2019. You know, we had should have beaten France at home, should have beaten, or was very close to beating Ireland, and Wales was an 11-point game. I think it was 11 or 9-point game. So I mean, we won't talk about the away results, but the home ones were, you know, it's just so close. It's such small little fine margins at international level that are the difference between winning and losing. And just unfortunately, we haven't got that killer instinct yet. But I'm fully convinced Italy will be, I'm not going to say a dominant force, but are going to be a much more competitive force than what they have been.
And you've touched upon two retired players now in Parise and Giraldini. How important were they in that Italian squad, and who are some of the new leaders in that squad now?
Yeah, well, I don't think Sergio's fully retired. I think that's who knows what's going to happen. I think he's, you know, pretty unlucky with the World Cup, the World Cup, and obviously COVID. But yeah, I think that's probably definitely an area that even, you know, Franco's probably looking to in terms of leadership roles. So there's a lot of young guys that have come through, and you know, Luca Bigi, who you know, is a really solid player, and I think he's a perfect choice to be captain because he's played for Benetton. He now plays with Zebre, so he's got that link. But he also wasn't an international starter up until maybe a year or year and a half or so ago, because Leo Giraldini was there. So, you know, the international scene to him is also quite new. So there's a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. But I think that's where, you know, whenever big leaders like Zani, like Giraldini, like Parise maybe are back, that's sort of, you know, it's a blank canvas, and then you see who's going to come through. So I would have, you know, just looking from the outside, you would definitely go, you know, Gambisi definitely is one of those. But you've got leadership in different forms. You got guys that talk, you got guys that do stuff on the field, you got guys that keep other guys in line. So leadership, you know, has many different forms.
And I'll just move on to some quick fire predictions for the Six Nations then.
Okay.
Tournament winners.
I want to say France.
Wooden spoon.
You
can say Wales.
I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna go out on the limb and say Wales.
Yeah. Player of the tournament.
Player of the tournament. It's hard to look past Dupont.
Breakthrough player.
I think. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I'd probably say maybe, I don't know if I can say Hugo Keenan again, because I know he's already played a few games for Ireland, but I think he's looked really sharp for Ireland when he's played. So I think he could be one that's talked of a lot more.
And finally, from an Italian point of view, if you could pick any player from any other team to be in Italy's team, who would that be?
Who would that be? I think, I don't know, I have a lot of respect, I must say, for Owen Farrell, just his ruthlessness and his, you know, wanting to win, and his humbleness as well, you know, but he knows exactly what he wants to do. So I think if I was a coach and wanted to have that sort of steely determination, but yet a bit of guile and composure under pressure, I think definitely it would be him. He could potentially, I don't know, play 12.
Our last up then, Wales will play France in Paris. Obviously, it's always a hard game. Not in recent years, where Wales have been able to go to Paris and do quite well, but France will be one of their favourites of the tournament. Tobias, what do you make of the France team, and who are some of their standout players?
Oh, well, I think if you watched France last year, a really strong side. You know, Sean Edwards come in. I think he's sorted the defence out there, but I think the depth they have as well in the squad is pretty strong. Because I know every year you see the French Six Nations squad, and there'll be quite a few names in there. You think, well, do you mean they wasn't in the squad last year? But yeah, they back row. I think they've got an outstanding back row. I think Aldrich's fit now after being ruled out. The age got Olivon. I think Walkie's in there as well. And then, you know, the back line, they've got a few players missing. I know Vakatawa's out, Dan Tamak's out, but then you got one of the best players in the world at the minute, Dupont there. Do you know what I mean? They have got some team.
Adam, where do you think France's best areas of the game are?
Oh, well, since Sean Edwards has gone in there, the defence has improved a lot. And they're just a far more consistent team now. There always used to be that old cliche, you never know which French team will show up. But now they're consistently performing well. Even in the Autumn Nations Cup in the final against England, they had their second team out. And, they should have won that game, went to extra time and lost in the end. But no, they were really impressive against us twice last year in the Six Nations and in that friendly. Well, they battered us in that friendly, didn't they? So, yeah, no, they've really improved. Fair play to them.
Yeah, Tobias, then, who's your player to watch from the French squad?
Yeah, I've gone with skipper Charles Olivon. I think outstanding defender, ball carrier, leader. He's got it all. I think he's got 2 tries against England last year in the win against them. He's probably don't look like a natural 7, but I think he does the job. He can do your job at blindside, do your job at open side. So I've gone for him.
Adam, who's your player to watch for the French squad?
I've gone for someone a lot more inexperienced. I've gone for the fly half Louis Carbonel, the Toulon fly half. He's only got 3 caps to his name, only 21 years old. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what he can do if he's given the chance.
Yeah, I've gone for someone that has been quite well known, but for probably all the wrong reasons, in Mohamed Hawass, the Montpellier prop. He's probably most famous for punching Jamie Ritchie, but he is actually really good around the park, really strong scrummager. He is a massive, massive bloke, and he can really be the sort of the pin in the France's scrum. He doesn't go backwards. I don't think I've seen him go backwards, and obviously you can tell with his mentality, he plays a bit on the edge. You don't want to see players throwing punches, but you don't want to see players going backwards either. You want to see players on the front foot. Obviously, he took it over the line when he punched Jamie Ritchie in that game. But if he can get the balance between aggression and discipline, I think he can be one of the best tight ends in the world.
But he cost France the Grand Slam with that, didn't he? They lost to Scotland in the end after that punch. So surprised they gave him a chance straight after it again.
Yeah, he did. And well, that's always been France's problem, really, the discipline, isn't it? You can cast your mind back to the France game in the World Cup where Sebastian Vermahina elbowed Aaron Wainwright in the face, and their discipline does always cost them. But yeah, as I said, it's probably about finding the gap between aggression and discipline, because teams are scared to go to Paris, or they were scared in previous years. You look at the early 2000s, you wouldn't want to be going to Paris because you knew you were in for a little bit of a hiding. The likes of Chabal and people like that. And maybe the thing is with them is they, the likes of Chabal, Dusatoir, etc. They did play hard rugby, but they did play within the rules of the game as well. And I think that's sort of, if you look at France's team, maybe the likes of Olivon, someone like that, that's the sort of the perfect leader they've got.
Seems as if they've got their typical French flair back. They're confident again. They've got that swagger. That's what France were built off for years. That confidence, knowing they could turn up and beat anyone. How many times did they beat the All Blacks in big games? And I think they've got that mentality back again now.
Do you think teams won't be scared going out to Paris this year now with no fans there, because the atmosphere there is pretty electric, isn't it?
Yeah, but on the other hand, if you start winning, the fans are quick to turn on the team, and quite quickly it's easy to use the fans to your advantage. So yeah, it can work 2 ways. When things are going well for them, the fans are brilliant, but as soon as things don't go well for them, they do get on their team's back a bit, and it can get to them.
Yeah, you mentioned the French flair, and obviously there's probably no 2 players that epitify that more than their halfbacks in Roman and Tamak, who's obviously out injured, and Vrumi Vakatawa, the centre, out injured as well. Obviously you've got Dupont as well, that everybody's mentioned as probably the player of the tournament. What does it mean to France, Tobias, to have Ntamak, Vakatawa, and a few other names missing out as well?
I think it's huge. Last year or so, how influential Ntamak's been for a youngster. Since Vakatawa's moved into the centre, I think he's been outstanding. He started off out on the wing. I know Jalibert will probably start at 10, and Carbonell's there as well on bench. Two good, highly rated youngsters to come in. So they'll miss some Tamak, but I think the replacements there, they've got solid replacements, and you've still got like Fiku in the centre as well who can do a good job. So I think they'll be all right.
And Adam, obviously, I briefly mentioned Dupont there. Do you think he's probably one of the best players in the world at the moment, if not the best?
Yeah, I think he's definitely one of the best players in the world. Maybe even the best player in the world. Like, he's just so good at the moment. He's making Toulouse and France, get back to their best. And I don't think it'll be too long until he's holding silverware on the domestic level and with France.
Yeah, himself combined with Roman Ntamack as well. They're really probably going to lead a legacy both with Toulouse and France. And, go back to the good old days of Toulouse and France being the dominant force, hopefully, because it's obviously good for rugby to see a competitive France again.
Yeah, I think world rugby needs a strong France.
Do you think France are the best ever country to not win a World Cup?
Yeah, definitely. Like, they've come close a few times. I think they got to the final in 99 and 2011. 2011, they lost by a point against New Zealand. On another day, they could have won that, although we should have beaten them in the semi-finals. But that's all right. I'm over that.
That's a different conversation. All right, moving on then to our final guest. He's Welsh-born, but he's a journalist, and he lives out in France, so he's plenty qualified to talk us through their team. It's Illtud Dafydd. So first of all then, tell us a bit about yourself and how you ended up in France covering French rugby.
So I've always wanted to be a rugby journalist, and I went to Cardiff University to do a master's in broadcast journalism, and then worked for BBC Sport Wales for a bit covering working on Scrum 5 and Club Rugby and SFLC, and also worked on Rugby Power, which is SFLC's programme covering under-18s rugby, but that regional colleges and also international. And then I moved to Paris to work to write for Agence France Presse, which is France's national news agency, about 2 years ago now. And I just cover the top 14, French national rugby, and also European Champions Cup and stuff. And because AFP's headquarters is in Paris, we have to also cover or help cover the guys. We've got bureaus in London and in the UK or in South Africa or New Zealand and Australia. Sometimes we offer a helping hand out with stuff like Super Rugby or the Gallagher Premiership and also the Guinness Pro 14.
And the Six Nations starts this weekend, and the France squad's been announced. There's a few players out injured. I know Ntamack, Vakatawa's out, but what do you make of the squad as a whole?
It's okay. It's not too bad. Romain Ntamack is quite a big blow because he was in such good form and he plays so well and combines so superbly with Antoine Dupont at both club level with Toulouse and also internationally. But then you have Mathieu Jalibert stepping in quite well, and he made his Test debut back in 2018 before Romain Ntamack even broken through to the under-20s. So there's been high expectations regarding Mathieu Jalibert for a while. When it comes to Virmi Vakatawa, that's a huge blow. I was at Racing's game when he did his knee injury, and it was the whole press box got really quiet and the stadium got really quiet, as it would be because there's no fans in there. But yeah, you could feel how much of a blow it is because he's such an individual. He's so individually brilliant that he can turn a game at his expense. And with an offload or a supporting wing, he's one of the best centres in the world. And in the forwards, there's no Camille Shah, everyone knows him because of his massive neck, but he also can get around the park quite well as well. But he's been replaced by Pierre Bourgaret, who probably won't start, but he'll be on the bench. He scored 8 tries this season in the top 14, which is almost a record for a hooker. He's joined with Bismarck Duplessis, who's playing with Montpellier, so Bourgaret is in quite good form. And apart from that, it's pretty straightforward kind of thing. There's not too many shocks, there's not many big call-ups really. Maybe Gamin Villiers keeping his place from the Autumn Nations Cup is a big one because he impressed so well there. And also fellow winger Damien Penaud returns after missing the autumn test campaign with an injury.
France performed well in the autumn. How much of this do you think was down to Sean Edwards going up there?
I find this obsession with Sean Edwards that there is in Wales and also in England and Scotland and Ireland regarding how it's as if France were no one, and then Sean Edwards came in and has made them world beaters, which Sean Edwards has definitely helped. He's brought in discipline, but the blitz defence that he loves to work with, and also he was so successful with Wales. Fabien Galtier has always used the blitz defence back when he was Montpellier coach with Toulon, and even I don't think it was he used it as an old backers when he was a staff conseil. But Sean Edwards and Fabien Galtier has always had a blitz defence, but what Sean Edwards has brought in is a bit more discipline. He doesn't speak much French, but he's admitted, and the players have said that he doesn't need to, because all he needs to know is learn 2-3 words for every exercise. And because the players are such high caliber athletes, they just need short, sharp, quick instructions, and they know what they're doing. And that's your difference. And maybe you saw them get off the line a little bit quicker last year, with some people saying they were a bit offside. Me in the press box and Stade de France, they were a bit quick coming off the defensive line. But if the ref doesn't spot and you get away with it, then great stuff. And yeah, Sean Edwards, he's brought in a bit of difference, maybe a bit more discipline. That the Latin sort of emotional aren't quite used to that, but at the same time, he hasn't had that much of an impact on it, because someone like Fabien Galtier has always been disciplined. Also, he's got a strength and conditioning coach in Thibaut Giroud, who was drafted in the NFL. He's a bobsleigh bronze medalist, and he's the strength and conditioning coach, and he's disciplined as well. He's spent a lot of time in the US and the UK. I think he worked with Glasgow Warriors as well. So it's not just Sean Edwards, but he is a big part of the puzzle.
Yeah, and are there any players you think that are unlucky to miss out in the squad?
Put me on the spot there. The top 14's got 14 professional clubs in it, and I don't know how many players. Off the top of my head, I'm not too sure really. I think Cameron Walker, who's come in, he definitely deserves a spot because he's superb in the loose and fantastic in the lineouts. It's difficult. It's really difficult. Go maybe Donathan Taufenois, who West 92 winger and capped. He was originally in the 42-man squad that was in the training camp in Nice last week, but he was missed out on the 31-man group, and he's been in 8 tries and how many were ever games in the top 14 this season, but and tried and then tested test levels. So then his club teammate Dave Thomas got the nod over him. And apart from that, I don't think there's many people that you could argue that they could be in or not, because what France's issues maybe been over the past 11 years since they last won the Six Nations has been a lack of consistency throughout the park. Some people point to they haven't picked the same halfbacks together and God knows when, but it's just generally they just used to such a big turnover of squad that it didn't help anyone. That whenever they turned up to a new camp in that Six Nations, an autumn series or a summer tour, there's always new faces and the spine of the team was always different. But now it's good that they've kept it settled, and that was one idea that Fabien Galtier always wanted to. That he wanted to work with a core group of players, because when he took over, he realised he had quite an inexperienced squad, and he needed to get them up to that 35-40 test mark benchmark, which for him isn't enough, because he wanted that to be 50-60 by the time the 2023 World Cup comes on home. So yes, there might be some players who are individually frustrated to not be in, but at the same time, the coaching, the decision, the pathway decision with our focus on the 2023 World Cup is justified.
So you mentioned you always wanted to be a rugby journalist. What are some of your favourite Six Nations memories, and why is the Six Nations such a special tournament?
I'm going to throw mud in your face, and I'm going to say that Six Nations is a bit overrated, because it brings out rugby fans, and it brings rugby to terrestrial TV followers, but at the same time, it's what some of my friends call springtime rugby fans, where people just turn up when the weather's great between February and March, and then forget about rugby until 12 months later, which is frustrating, because I enjoy rugby of all sorts of rugby, be that under 16s colleges or seven-a-side tournaments in Dubai, Tyrrell's Premiership, or the Alliance Premiership as it's called now. And I think people should enjoy that, but at the same time, it is a special time of year when daffodils come up to blossom and the sun comes out, the temperature rises a bit, and the six best teams in Europe, depending if you might not be Georgia, play against each other, and also some of the best players in the world get together. So it's a good time of year. Some of my Six Nations memories. I grew up suffering a bit as a Wales fan, and then also the 2005 Grand Slam was quite a nice one. I also enjoyed being in Cardiff when Ireland beat Wales for their first Grand Slam in 2009. I was with an Irish friend, and it was great to see his joy and how much he enjoyed it. I've always been a massive fan of Rowan O'Gara, so to see him drop kick the winner was pretty special as well. And France have had some great days, smashing Wales a few times. I remember in Wembley, but then the other side of it was when Wales went over to Paris in the early 2000s with Neil Jenkins and Scott Quinnell and Rob Howley. That was superb. But the one that probably stands out is 1999. Scott Gibbs scoring late on at Wembley. That was pretty epic.
And you're Welsh born, and obviously you're out in France now. But what is your favourite Wales-France game?
Oh, I don't know. That's a difficult one. It probably has to be one of those in 2002, 2003. But it also might be 2005. I remember Martin Williams scoring with brawn instead of brains on the jersey, because that was when you realised that Wales rarely ever won it in Paris and haven't won that often. And that was when you realised, wow, Wales could win a Grand Slam here. It wasn't just like, oh, it's just a one-off. This is the motor of what things could keep going. But no, those also victories in the early 2000s were pretty special over in Paris. In recent years, they haven't been classics, though, really. They've been quite tight. They haven't been. Last year was quite fun, actually, to see France just let loose, and it was sad to see Wales lose at home. But at the same time, it was great to see this French team take that step forward of winning all on the road in a place they hadn't done for a while. So yeah, they're always good encounters, I'd imagine. But recently, in the past 5-6 years, they haven't been fantastic, and they certainly haven't been as good as what it was in 2005.
Yeah, and as an outsider looking into French rugby, it sometimes seems like that club rugby comes first. Is that actually true or not? Because obviously in the Autumn Nations Cup, we saw in the final, France had to put a second string team out due to the rules they had. I think it was an agreement they had with the clubs. So is it true that clubs, like the club game, comes first in France?
Depends who you ask. If you ask the clubs, they'll say yes. If you ask the French Federation of Bernard Laporte, who's the president, he'll say no, because his team has preference. One anecdote I've got for you, if you want to take it with a pinch of salt, is after the France against Italy, I think it was France-Ireland in the Six Nations, I asked Baptiste Pesanti, who plays for Pau, and I asked him, they were set to play against England the following week, so I asked him, oh, did you watch England earlier this afternoon to see what they were going to be like in the final in 7 days' time? And he said, no, Pau were playing, so I watched that instead. And this guy is meant to be a test level athlete, but his preference was the club in the area where he grew up, and the club that's been so honest to him, and the club that has brought him up to be such a good player. And you have to realise that French is it's a bit different to Wales and England, where it's very regional. Yeah, the country as a whole, everyone gets behind the blue jersey and the tricolour flag and the cock on the chest, but people are very proud of where they're from, be that a town or a region, and so the priority is probably more there, localized. So, and then when that transitions onto rugby field, then obviously some people might prefer or might have more of a feeling towards playing for Clermont or Brive or Bayonne, because there's such a cultural identity to those regions that is far more maybe apparent and far more practical for them. And because the top 14 makes so much money, it's unbelievable. The next TV deal could be cost up to 105 million. Euros per season, which is 3 or 4 times almost what the Pro 14 is, and 40 million times 40 million pounds more than the allowed Gallagher Premiership. So it's such a big financial beast.
Some quick fire predictions then for the Six Nations to finish. Tournament winners:
France.
Wooden spoon:
Italy.
Player of the tournament:
it's not a very quick fire and it's not very original, but Antoine Dupont.
Breakthrough player:
Arthur Vincent.
And if you could take one player from one of the other nations to play for France, who would you pick?
Justin Tipuric.
All right then, lovely to hear from Illtud then, and thanks to him and all our guests for coming on and joining us and giving us their views. A little bit of a chat now to finish then, boys, and I'll probably put a couple of you on the spot now. We're going to go some of the same predictions that our guests did. So first of all, Tobias, who's your tournament winner?
Yeah, I'll go England, just because they're at home to France. I know it's behind closed doors, but I still think it'd make a difference.
Yeah, I got the deciding vote then, boys, because I can tell you it is one of those two, as you'd expect. I think I'm with Adam on this one, and as much as it pains me to say it, I think that England will be too strong again. I think losing Ntamack, obviously you have got the likes of Jalibert and Carbonell to come in, but what Ntamack brought in a short period of time for France, I don't know if they'll be able to recover from that. And like you said, going to England as well is going to be a really tough ask for them. So I think that will be the deciding factor, really. Tobias, then, who do you think is going to win the wooden spoon?
Well, I'm just going to say Italy for the sake of it not being Wales. So Italy.
Adam?
Italy, but I think the Italy-Wales game there'll be one score in it, so there won't be much in it.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you both. I'm going to have to say Italy. There have been signs of them improving, but I think in international rugby, with maybe the exception of Wales at the moment, every side improves. And I just don't think, I think it's going to take a lot for Italy to bridge that gap. And I think it'll be hard for them to do it in the next 10 years, let alone this year. So I think I'm going to have to say Italy as well. Moving on to the players then, and Tobias, who's going to be your player of the tournament?
Yeah, well, the obvious choice is Dupont, like everyone else has said. And he probably won't surprise me, but I'm going to back that up with Finn Russell. Probably one of Scotland's best players, been outstanding for us in the last few years, taking them to a European final. And I think if he can get a back line taken, I think Scotland will do damage this year.
Yeah, I'll go for the obvious one. I'm sure most of our guests have said the same. I don't blame them. I'll go Dupont.
Yeah, and that's another hat trick then. I'm going to go Dupont as well. Yeah, well, speaks for himself really, doesn't it? And all of the guests as well have mentioned him. He's a fantastic player and I look forward to seeing him play well. All right, moving on then to breakthrough player. Adam, who do you think will be the breakthrough player?
I'll go for something a bit different. I'll go for the Italian fly half Garbisi, purely because he's got nothing to lose. And I think if he gets some decent ball, he could impress. He impressed in the Nations Cup and against Scotland against Ireland in the Six Nations, sorry. So yeah, I'll go him.
Tobias?
I'm going to go for a player I've already mentioned, the Cameron Redpath. If he gets a nod at 12 for Scotland, I think, he's done good things over in England this year. So I think he'll be able to show he can do on the international stage.
Yeah, Redpath's a great shout. I really enjoy watching him play for Bath, and I think he's up there. I think Cameron Waukee, the French back row as well. I know he has picked up an injury and he might be out. Not sure how long for, but I watched him play for Bordeaux against Dragons a few weeks ago, and he's such a nuisance. As Illtud said, he's sort of a 6.5. He does all the work of a 7. He tackles, he jackals, but he's also a good presence in the line out as well. And I think he's such an athlete. He's a real beast, and I think to see him play might be quite enjoyable, unless he plays against Wales. That's a wrap then. Thanks for joining us on something a bit different. Thanks to all the guests for joining us as well and talking through their opinions and views. And we look forward to seeing you again.